Joining us now is the co-founder of Dropsite News, great friend of the show, Jeremy Scahill. It's good to see you, Jeremy. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be back.
Jeremy, you might as well be a regular here on the show, and at this time you certainly are. So we have major breaking news, guys. We can go ahead and put A2 up here on the screen. Jeremy's immediate analysis. Hamas and Palestinian factions have agreed to the Gaza ceasefire. Trump confirms a deal was reached. So Jeremy, give us some of your immediate reaction to the framework of the deal. We noted in our introduction that everyone is emphasizing phase one. What exactly does that mean? Why did Hamas agree to the deal, and what can we expect in the future?
Yeah, Hamas really came to what they felt was a realistic conclusion, that the only path to a diplomatic resolution of this war, the only way to end this genocide without fighting Israel to a stalemate and forcing them to withdraw, the only path to that was through Donald Trump. And so the Palestinian negotiators from Hamas and Islamic Jihad consulted with all these other Palestinian factions, and they embarked on a mission to try to negotiate as ferociously as they could to try to hold the red line on what they felt were issues that would dramatically impact the very existence of the Palestinian struggle for self-determination, national liberation, and statehood. They did make some major concessions. They had insisted for months, since Israel blew up that original January ceasefire deal, that they were not going to release any more Israeli captives unless there was a firm commitment and a timeline for total withdrawal of Israeli occupation forces. Now what they have agreed to is that after they return the 20 living Israeli captives, and they haven't located yet, I understand, all of the bodies of deceased Israeli captives, but that is sort of being deferred. But once they hand those 20 Israeli captives over, there is going to be an Israeli pullback that I am told is pretty much in line with the map that Donald Trump released as part of his 20-point plan. It's not that big of an Israeli troop withdrawal. They're going to get a very large number of Palestinians that are going to be freed from prison during this exchange. As we're speaking right now, negotiations are still going on. Even though both sides have said that they're going to accept this deal, there's a major battle going on over which Palestinian prisoners are going to be released by Israel. Hamas is saying that they want some of the most high-profile Palestinian political prisoners freed. Marwan Barghouti, who many believe would be the logical and popular choice for president of an independent Palestine. He's serving 5 life sentences right now. He's not even from Hamas. He's from Fatah, the political opponent party of Hamas. Ahmed Sadat, who is from the PFLP, the left-wing Marxist party in Palestine. He's serving multiple life sentences. Abdullah Barghouti, who was a Qassam Brigade's commander in the West Bank. They want these guys out. A major point of their attack on October 7th was to free Palestinian prisoners. There's also a question of whether Palestinian fighters who participated in the October 7th attacks are going to be released as part of this deal. Israel does not want to release them. So there is still fighting going on, but the basic architecture of this is they release all of the Israeli captives. There's a large number of Palestinian captives that are going to be freed. A ceasefire is in the process of taking hold right now. Israel is not going to fully withdraw. They're going to pull back to lines that President Donald Trump had wanted. Aid is going to be resumed at levels that are similar or equal to the January ceasefire deal, which is around 600 trucks. Significantly for the Palestinian side, the Rafah border crossing is going to be opened in both directions, according to the deal. Israel is not necessarily going to be pulling out of that area, but the crossing is going to be open. The maps that Trump put out show the Israelis still firmly entrenched in the south, but you're going to have equipment that's supposed to start coming in to clear rubble. Gaza Humanitarian Foundation is done, is what I'm told, that the Palestinian negotiators were assured that they are no longer going to be operating inside of Gaza. What Israel did not get out of this first phase were huge things that Israel had demanded. Hamas is not agreeing to any disarmament or demilitarization. Donald Trump has been clear that Palestinians are not going to be expelled from Gaza. They deferred all of the major questions about governance in Gaza going forward. Trump's 20-point plan had sweeping ideas for this. Now, it doesn't mean they're going away. It means that they were able to achieve a ceasefire and freedom for many, many Palestinian captives without giving up what they had said is their ultimate red line, and that is that Palestinians have the right to armed self-defense against Israeli occupation.
Jeremy, what are the areas that Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and any other factions that were involved in these discussions, what are the things they're most nervous about in accepting this deal?
Well, look, Musa Abu Marzouk, who's one of the longest members of Hamas, I spoke to him this week, and he said it all boiled down to, we realize we just have to take a risk and trust Donald Trump. And they know that that's a huge risk. They recognize that he's erratic. They recognize that he said he was engaging in diplomatic negotiations with Iran and then used that as cover to bomb them. So on the one hand, they're nervous because Donald Trump can flip the script and say one thing on Tuesday and another thing on Wednesday. That's a major concern. But even more than the Donald Trump risk that they're taking, it's the wild card of Benjamin Netanyahu. This man has a PhD in violating ceasefires. He has maintained that Israel is really not going to end its war, that it's going to continue on until it achieves all of its goals of total victory. And let's be clear, Netanyahu really does want to eliminate Palestinians from the Gaza Strip. So there is concern on the one hand, and I think it's, this would be the extreme scenario, that this is sort of a trick, a setup, that once they give all of their leverage back, which is the Israeli captives, that Trump will allow Netanyahu to somehow justify continuing the genocide. That is that would be the most extreme concern. But I think on a more practical level, the fear is that they hand over all of these captives. They do have aid that comes in, which everyone wants. They have an end to the massive bombing campaign. But then Israel goes into a stage of constantly so-called mowing the lawn, that they're regularly striking in Gaza, that the second and third phases of negotiations start to go nowhere. World attention starts turning away. And then Netanyahu is able to sort of set Israel up to continue on with its maximalist agenda of a war of annihilation. I think those are the biggest concerns. Look, one source that I talked to, who's very close to the Palestinian negotiating team, said, it is a big gamble to trust Trump. And these Palestinian negotiators could either in the end be looked at as having engaged in a genius risk move, or they could end up looking like fools. In the broader epic historical sense, I think a lot of Palestinians fear that this could then transform into some kind of Oslo process where, it's just a kind of slow death or killing of all of these Palestinian aspirations, and it gets mired in endless negotiations. And I think that's the longer term fear. But there's Palestinian sources I'm talking to are saying that they feel that they made big concessions in the name of their people, but that they have not conceded any of their core red lines. Now, Israel, of course, is not happy if Donald Trump does enforce this in the way that he's going to, and you're going to see a big fight on the part of the Israelis to try to roll back some of the rhetoric from Donald Trump about this. Final note I'll just say is it was interesting last night when Trump sort of candidly was preparing the public for a deal that was coming down the pipeline. He said, "Oh, we have really good negotiators," and he said, "And unfortunately, they have really good negotiators on the other side too." And he was referring not only to the Palestinians, but talking about some of these Arab countries. And I think it's a risk that the Palestinians are taking because they're going to have to hope that Egypt and Qatar and Turkey and other Islamic countries that are involved with this are not going to just sit by passively. And that if Israel does start violating the terms of the agreement, that their word is going to matter with Donald Trump. Those are very big questions up in the air right now.
Yeah, that was really my question here about phase 2 or whatever you want to call it, Jeremy, about this eventual coalitional provisional type authority over Palestine. How is Hamas viewing that process? Is it something that they want to address in the future? Do they have confidence in it? What's their view there?
I mean, I'm told that what the American mediators or the Americans, Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, told these delegations last night is that they want to immediately go into those negotiations, that Donald Trump he doesn't want a delay in it. That creates a complicated situation because at that point, Hamas and Islamic Jihad have given up all of their captives. And the plan says that Hamas is going to relinquish authority in Gaza. They've told me numerous times that they want to do that. The question then becomes, what Palestinians are they negotiating with? Is there going to be an increased role for Mahmoud Abbas, the unpopular president of the Palestinian Authority? Who is going to be empowered to make a deal on behalf of the Palestinians? This is not as simple as Donald Trump and his people have made it out to be. Palestine consists of a diverse array of political parties that are united under one large umbrella that they want Palestinian independence, but they have disputes among themselves. So who is going to serve on any kind of an interim committee of independent technocrats is one issue. The other issue is Tony Blair going to essentially be in charge of Gaza? What kind of an international force is going to go in? Is the United Nations going to actually be given a legitimate role, given that the United States and Israel both have basically said they don't even recognize the United Nations anymore? So there's a lot of discussion happening among Palestinian factions. And I have to say, I think there's a lot of unity actually among those factions. So if it was a matter of the Palestinians coming up with who's your delegation going to be from across the political spectrum, I think they would be able to answer that within days. The issue is if Israel and the United States are going to recognize them as speaking for the Palestinian people, or they're going to try to railroad this into just a malleable creature in the form of Mahmoud Abbas and the Palestinian Authority. Hamas says that they would support the Palestinian Authority because they want Palestinian unity. The question is, though, if Mahmoud Abbas and his people would even be capable of making an agreement that preserves the rights of the Palestinians.
So, Jeremy, we, of course, previously had a different deal at the beginning of the Trump administration. Similarly, a phase deal. Similarly, the first phase was arrived at, and then Israel violated the ceasefire. Trump didn't keep his eye on the ball, didn't require Israel to stay in that deal. Do you have a sense that the dynamics are different this time, such that the results will be different?
Oof, I can't answer that question and claim to say that I know what's going to happen, Crystal, but the track records are not good of Donald Trump and Netanyahu. I mean, Trump just allowed Netanyahu to totally blow up that deal, reimpose a full spectrum blockade, resume, a sustained terror bombing, invade Gaza City, try to displace 1 million people from the largest population center in Gaza, all while claiming that he was the president of peace. So, we have to be very realistic about it. On the other hand, we've talked about this before. Trump sees huge dollar signs, real estate development, all kinds of investment that would also benefit directly his family members, also possibly even Steve Witkoff's son. And I think Trump genuinely does want to cash in as much as he can with these Arab Gulf nations of Qatar, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates. So, capitalism at the end of the day, greed at the end of the day, ego at the end of the day, those are unfortunately the dynamics that I think Palestinians are going to have to rely on in hoping that Trump does keep any kind of a deal in place. On paper, the Trump plan is very bad for the Palestinian people. These negotiations are being viewed as a decisive crossroad in the 77-year history of this major battle since Israel was imposed on the region and the Nakba began. So, I think the Palestinians recognize they're going into existential negotiations against an adversary that has just unfurled a neo-colonialist plan for Palestine.
Jeremy, what do the Palestinians think broke Trump? And what's your own personal view? Trump has had this ability. I mean, we were talking before you came in. This does validate a lot of the criticism that we've said here on the show for 2 years, that an American president can end this at any time that they want. And somehow, some way, Trump just came to the point where he said, no, done, we're done. It is all ending now. And of course, it immediately, at least something, progresses. What happened inside of either the Trump delegation, the Trump White House, that caused him to force Israel here to the table, force the Bibi apology? It just seemed like a complete about-face from previous U.S. policy of the last 9 months.
I think there's a couple of dynamics. Some have to do with domestic politics in the United States, internal dynamics of Trump's movement and his base. But let's just start at the very top level. For 2 years, a nuclear power backed by the United States has tried to destroy a guerrilla insurgency movement in the form of Qassam brigades and Sarai al-Quds that largely manufacture their own weapons. And Israeli troops are still being killed. They have failed to eliminate and crush the Palestinian armed resistance. In that sense, even though Israel has succeeded in killing enormous numbers of Palestinians, they have not achieved a military victory, despite the fact that the foe that they're fighting is engaging in guerrilla warfare, largely with homemade weapons. I think that that fact, combined with the massive outpouring of opposition to Israel around the world, combined with the fact that people within Trump's own base are starting to turn on Israel. You see the public polling, but it also applies to within his MAGA movement. And that those sentiments are just growing and growing. I think he started to view this entire war as a liability. I think that he was frustrated and feeling like the Israelis just kept singing the same song. We need more weapons. We need more time. I think Trump got tired of them. I think Trump is increasingly hearing from people that he listens to, Netanyahu is bad news. And I do think Trump genuinely wants the Nobel Peace Prize. I don't think that is just some kind of joke. I think he really thinks he can do this thing and make like the grandest of grand business deals. That's how he's talking about it. So I think it's a combination of, despite Israel managing to mass murder all these Palestinians to level Gaza, they didn't achieve a military victory. The Palestinian resistance did fight them off. And so I think that it's all of those factors combined. And I think Trump basically at the end of the day is just like, this is getting too annoying to me to have to deal with you. And I want to take some big W's here. I want to start winning again. And I think it's all those factors combined.
And lastly, Jeremy, we played this before, but I want to put it back up on the screen. A4 guys, just some of the Palestinians in the street in Gaza celebrating upon news reaching them that some sort of a deal had been struck. What are you hearing? What are you seeing in terms of reaction from ordinary Palestinians living in Gaza who have been subjected to just horrors beyond belief that none of us could possibly imagine over these past 2 years?
I mean, the first thing is, I just was getting message after message from Palestinian friends in Gaza just saying, praise God, that this is going to end. And then sentiments of recognizing all who have been lost. And, a lot of journalists that I know in Gaza were sending videos of the most famous journalist from this Gaza war, Anas al-Sharif of Al Jazeera, who famously, the last ceasefire that was announced on live television, took off his flak jacket with the word press on it and his helmet. And he really was the one that broke the news of the celebrations inside of Gaza for the world. And he was, of course, assassinated by Israel. 240 plus Palestinian journalists and media workers have been murdered during this genocide. And a lot of Palestinian journalists are expressing sorrow that those heroes, those journalistic heroes, are not here to see the day and to report on the day. So I think it's a mixture of immediate relief and joy, but also a sense of immense sorrow for all of the loved ones who have been lost.
And then, Jeremy, what's your final assessment? You were talking there about Egypt, Turkey, all of them. What do you think that their commitment is here to some sort of deal? I know that many Palestinians were very frustrated with the way that they have diplomatically handled the situation over the last 2 years, although they did at least play some part in this. What is their kind of affirmation, red line, if you will, for what the future may hold?
It's a great question. I think that, let's take Turkey as an example. Turkey really started to get deeply involved in this in a more intense way over the last couple of weeks. And the head of Turkish intelligence made the extraordinary move of actually going and directly meeting with Hamas as they deliberated how to respond to Trump's plan. I think Erdogan is an incredibly crafty political leader who wants to be close to Trump, but also have the kind of relationship where he's able to maneuver for his own power and influence in the broader Islamic world. Turkey, of course, is between the Islamic world and broader Europe, and I think Erdogan views this as a moment for Turkey to really rise and shine by having a complicated but close relationship with Trump. I think that's true of a lot of these other Arab and Gulf nations. I think Sisi of Egypt is also very concerned about his own survival and the stability of his own government. He came to power in a coup, overthrowing a democratically elected government. I think many Egyptians are very angry at the posture Egypt has taken during this genocide. So, there's a fifth dimensional chess game that is going on behind the scenes with all of these countries and their relationship with Donald Trump. The question is if they are actually reconfiguring their relationships with the United States, or this is essentially the Trump show. That's what's going to be very interesting to see. Once Trump is no longer president, what is the legacy of what took place here? Was it just a series of business deals that Donald Trump made? Is there going to be a totally different then relationship between the Arab Gulf countries, Turkey and the United States? Or is this a sort of new era that's coming on in the relationship between the United States and all of these countries? It's going to boil down a lot to what happens and what Trump does with this Gaza agreement. And if Israel is allowed to just full-blown resume the genocide again, I think it's going to be very difficult to sustain. I think the world is done with this. The overwhelming majority of people in the world want this done. The overwhelming majority of countries want this done. But you're asking a complicated question, and I think it boils down to, are they making a deal with Trump the man or Trump as the representative of the U.S. government?
Yes.
Can be very hard to tell. Very difficult to parse those things.